Imagine being the person who announced to the entire world that a fiery, world-ending revolution was arriving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you stand out in the wilderness, you tell everyone that the ultimate king is coming, he's got a winnowing fork, he's going to clear the threshing floor, and you build up this just massive apocalyptic expectation.
Right.
But then a few months later, you're rotting in a political dungeon.
Yeah.
And the revolutionary leader that you just announced is just, well, wandering around the countryside, like healing sick people.
Right.
That was the staggering reality for John the Baptist. I mean, he thought he was ushering in an earth-shattering political upheaval. And instead, he got something that looked, well, entirely different.
Which creates one of the most profound crises of expectations in ancient history.
Yeah.
I mean, the people on the ground thought they knew exactly what the architecture of a new divine kingdom should look like.
Right, they had the blueprints.
Exactly. But the historical execution completely subverted those blueprints.
And unpacking that friction is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are exploring the historical significance of the kingdom's arrival. And we're using this really fascinating commentary as our guide. It's called Matthew 11, an exegetical and biblical theological commentary by Marc Bates. It was published on Rabbit Room Apologetics.
It's a phenomenal resource.
It really is. And just to be completely clear right out of the gate, our goal today isn't to, preach or to validate these texts as absolute religious truth. We're acting more like historical detectives here.
Yes, absolutely.
We want to impartially map out the architecture of what this ancient text was actually claiming and how it dramatically clashed with the culture it entered. We are not taking sides left, right, or center on the theological claims. We're just looking at the historical and textual analysis.
And it is a deeply fascinating text to explore because Matthew chapter 11 represents this massive narrative pivot.
Oh, so.
Well, it shifts from private instruction, Jesus talking to a small group of followers, to widespread public evaluation. We finally get to see how the broader first century culture is reacting to these claims.
Okay.
And to understand the framework of that reaction, the commentary relies on a concept from a scholar named Walter C. Kaiser Jr. He calls it the promise plan of God.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is this promise plan?
The crucial thing to grasp here is that the text does not present the arrival of the kingdom as some sudden rupture from the past.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's not signaling the abolishment of the Torah, the Jewish law, or an abrupt cancellation of everything that came before. Instead, it's framed as an organic continuation.
Yeah.
It is the eschatological culmination of God's redemptive architecture.
Whoa, okay. Eschatological culmination. That is a heavy academic term. Can we translate that for a layperson?
Oh, my apologies. Yes. Eschatological just refers to the ultimate final stage of history. So what Bates is saying is that this kingdom isn't a reboot of the story. It is the highly anticipated finale that was planned from the very beginning. It's the promised restoration that all the ancient laws and prophets were aiming toward.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's the highly anticipated finale everyone was waiting for, that brings us right back to the guy who literally announced the opening curtain, John the Baptist.
Yes, John.
The text sets this really vivid scene where John is languishing in a prison at a place called Machaerus. He was locked up by Herod Antipas. And he's having a profound crisis of faith.
A very human moment.
Yeah, very human. He sends his followers to ask Jesus, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?"
Which is a staggering question coming from the primary herald of the kingdom.
Right. He's the hype man.
Exactly. And this reflects deep human frailty under suffering, obviously. But it also reflects the intense political and religious climate of Second Temple Judaism.
Tell me more about that.
Well, within that Hebraic cognitive environment, the Messiah was expected to bring transformative blessing, yes, but also immediate cosmic judgment against oppressors.
Okay, so it's like expecting a demolition crew to show up with dynamite to blast away the corrupt government. But instead, a team of medics arrives with bandages to treat the wounded.
That is a perfect analogy.
Because John had previously been preaching about unquenchable fire. He wanted immediate apocalyptic justice against a corrupt ruler like Herod. He's sitting in a dungeon wondering why the guy he endorsed hasn't overthrown the prison yet.
Yes. That friction between prophetic expectation and messianic execution is the very core of John's crisis. He wants the dynamite of judgment, but Jesus is deploying the bandages of mercy.
Wow.
And look at how Jesus responds to John's disciples. He doesn't give them a list of abstract dogmatic assertions.
Right. He doesn't just say, hey, tell John to trust me.
Exactly. He points to empirical covenantal evidence. He gives them a catalog of what the commentary calls Isaianic Miracles.
Meaning miracles prophesied in the Old Testament book of Isaiah.
Yes, specifically he's conflating passages from Isaiah 35 and Isaiah 61. He tells them to report back that the blind see, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news preached to them.
But how does that actually answer John's question, though? I mean, why is checking off a list of miracles better than just saying, yes, I am the king?
Because those specific actions function as messianic credentials within that promise plan we talked about earlier.
Oh, I see.
By doing these very specific things, Jesus is proving that the historical significance of the kingdom's arrival is that it advances first through restorative mercy before it ever culminates in final judgment.
Okay, so the order is different.
Exactly. The cosmic temple of creation is actively being restored from the fractures of human rebellion. The sick are healed, the marginalized are lifted up. The timeline is simply stretched out longer than John anticipated.
He wanted the fire right now.
Right. And Jesus tells him, "Blessed is the one who is not offended by me," which the commentary notes is a pastoral exhortation. It's a call to align human faith with this unfolding redemptive timetable rather than demanding God conform to human preconceptions.
Which is incredibly hard to do when you're the one sitting in the dungeon waiting for the rescue that isn't coming.
Absolutely.
So if the kingdom's timeline is completely different than expected, and John is sitting there doubting the whole operation, where does that leave him? Does the narrative just, write John off as a failure?
Actually, the complete opposite happens.
Really?
Yeah. As soon as John's disciples leave to carry that message back to the prison, Jesus turns to the crowds and entirely vindicates John.
Oh, wow.
He validates him as the legitimate forerunner. He asks the crowd, "What did you expect to see in the wilderness? A reed shaken by the wind? A guy in soft elite robes?"
Right.
John wasn't some fickle courtier bending to the political winds. Jesus calls him more than a prophet.
The commentary notes that Jesus actually quotes the ancient prophet Malachi here. He identifies John as the covenant messenger sent to prepare the way, effectively naming him as the long-awaited Elijah figure who was prophesied to return.
Operating in the spirit and power of Elijah to prepare the nation, he is fulfilling those final verses of the Old Testament. Jesus places John at the absolute pinnacle of the old era.
And that leads to a line that completely trips me up every time I look at this text.
Which one?
Jesus says, among those born of women, none is greater than John the Baptist. Mm-hmm. High praise, obviously.
Yeah.
But in the very next breath, he says, yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he.
Yes.
I have to ask about the mechanics of this. How can someone completely ordinary, like the least person, be greater than John the Baptist? Did John lose points because he had a moment of doubt in the prison cell?
It's a great question, and the commentary makes a critical distinction here to clear up that exact confusion. This is not a moral or spiritual judgment. Jesus isn't saying the average person is morally superior to John, or that John's doubt disqualified him.
Then what is it?
This is about what scholars call a redemptive historical positional privilege.
Time out. Redemptive historical positional privilege. That's another massive academic mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Explain that to me like I'm 5. What does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, think of it like being invited to an incredibly exclusive, life-changing event.
Okay.
John the Baptist is the greatest person to ever stand on the front porch and hand out the invitations. He has the highest honor of anyone outside the building.
Right.
But he dies before the doors officially open.
Oh.
So the least person who actually gets to walk inside the room, sit at the table, and experience the event itself has a greater positional privilege simply because of where they are standing.
I see.
John lived on the threshold. Participants in the new era get to experience the post-resurrection spiritual reality and the Messiah's indwelling presence, which is something John only pointed toward.
Ah, so it's about the shift in the era itself.
Yeah.
John is the greatest person to ever hold a candle, but the least person in the new era gets to actually stand in the sun.
A perfect analogy. And speaking of that era shift, Marc Bates does a fascinating linguistic deep dive into the original languages to explain how this transition works.
I love when we get into the original languages. Let's do it.
So Jesus says, all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. The Hebrew preposition used there is ad.
Okay.
And the commentary stresses that it is critical not to misread this. Ad does not signify a temporal cessation or the termination of the Torah's authority.
Wait, so it's not saying the Jewish law is dead and gone now?
Far from it. The word denotes movement toward a fixed destination.
Oh, I
see. The law and prophets were always prophesying with a view toward this specific messianic climax that John was inaugurating. They reached their intended goal.
Okay, that makes sense. But this era shift clearly isn't a quiet transition, because right around this verse, Jesus says the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. Yeah. That sounds incredibly intense. What does that actually mean in the historical context? Because if the whole point is that this kingdom advances through restorative mercy and healing, where does the violence come in?
It's one of the most heavily debated phrases in the text, actually. The Greek word used is biazetai.
Biazetai, okay.
And the source notes that biblical interpreters generally navigate three primary interpretations of how to read this friction.
Okay, hit me with them. What's the first one?
First is the passive or negative reading. This suggests the kingdom suffers violent opposition and persecution from hostile human authorities.
Well, that makes perfect sense considering John's current zip code is a political dungeon.
Exactly.
What's the second interpretation?
The middle or positive reading. This interprets Biazetai as the kingdom forcefully advancing and eager, energetic believers laying hold of it with bold, urgent determination.
Okay, so instead of external enemies attacking it, this is about people fiercely grabbing onto the kingdom despite the cost.
Right. It's a forceful enthusiasm.
I like that. And the third?
The figurative crowding reading. This envisions the sheer crowds thronging around John and Jesus. It represents an eager press of people metaphorically storming into the kingdom's blessings, desperate for healing and hope.
Kind of like a Black Friday sale, but for miracles.
Yes, essentially. Yeah. But whichever interpretation a historian leans toward, the overarching point is that the arrival of the kingdom was not a passive event.
Right.
It created massive, disruptive historical friction.
So if there is this massive disruptive era shift happening, whether it's facing violent opposition from kings or crowds or eagerly storming the gates for miracles, you'd expect the general public, the people watching this unfold, to be deeply engaged.
You would think so.
So how did that generation actually react to the arrival?
With a stunning amount of apathy.
Apathy?
Really? Yes. Jesus illustrates their reaction with a brilliant little parable about children sitting in the marketplaces.
Oh, I know this one.
They call out to their playmates, "We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn."
It is the ultimate damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario.
Exactly. John the Baptist came as a strict ascetic. He didn't eat or drink in normal social settings. He fasted in the desert.
And people didn't like that.
No, the general populace accused him of having a demon.
Wow.
But then Jesus comes doing the exact opposite. He partakes in social meals. He eats with tax collectors and outcasts.
And let me guess, they didn't like that either.
Nope. They label him a glutton and a drunkard.
They just refuse to be satisfied. I mean, you play upbeat music, they complain you're not taking things seriously. You play sad music, they complain you're a buzzkill.
Precisely. They rejected both messengers because the divine initiative didn't conform to their specific, rigid expectations of how God should act.
Which goes back to the blueprints we were talking about earlier.
Right. And this generational indifference isn't just framed as a minor annoyance, it carries massive covenantal weight.
How so?
Well, Jesus connects this apathy to devastating historical woes pronounced on specific Galilean cities.
Which cities?
Corazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum.
Why those cities specifically? What did they do?
It's not what they did, it's what they ignored. The text uses the Greek word dynamis, meaning mighty works or miracles.
Go.
The vast majority of Jesus' miracles were performed right in their streets. The blind were seen, the lame were walking right in front of them.
Wow.
And yet, the commentary notes that these cities are warned they will face a stricter judgment than the notoriously wicked pagan cities of antiquity like Tyre, Sidon, and even Sodom.
Wait. Worse than Sodom.
Yes.
That is a massive statement in ancient literature. Why would a polite fishing village in Galilee be judged more harshly than Sodom?
Because the historical warning here is that greater revelation entails greater responsibility.
Oh.
The author points out that Capernaum's prideful exaltation is countered with a descent to Hades, echoing the ancient prophet Isaiah's taunt against Babylon.
So it's a fierce warning against presumption.
Exactly. The mechanism of judgment here hinges on a Greek concept called metanoia.
Let me guess. Another term we need to translate.
Yes.
What is metanoia?
It means a fundamental, transformative change of heart and mind, a deep repentance.
Okay.
The tragedy of these cities is that they enjoyed mere physical proximity to the miracles. They probably watched the healings like it was street theater.
Just entertainment.
Right. But because they didn't experience metanoia, because their hearts remained indifferent to the message behind the miracles, that physical proximity actually just yielded their condemnation.
That is chilling. So you can be standing right next to the greatest paradigm shift in history, watching it happen, but if your heart is rigid, you miss it entirely.
Yes.
That begs a huge question for me. If the highly religious folks missed it because their theology was too rigid, and the general public in these cities completely missed it out of apathy, who is actually grasping this? Who gets to participate in the kingdom?
The text reveals that this understanding operates purely by sovereign grace. Jesus breaks into spontaneous praise here, thanking the Father that these things have been hidden from the wise and understanding, meaning the self-sufficient intellectual elites, and instead revealed to little children or infants.
I'm assuming he doesn't mean literal toddlers.
No. The commentary links this to the Hebrew concept of the Anawim.
Anawim.
Yes. It means the poor, the humble, the destitute, the people who know they have nothing to offer and aren't relying on their own intellectual pride.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Jesus follows this with a profound theological claim. He says, "All things have been handed over to me by my Father," claiming exclusive mutual knowledge with God.
Wow.
The commentary describes him here as the pre-existent logos or memra made flesh.
Time out again. Pre-existent logos made flesh. What does that actually mean for the people standing there listening to him?
It means Jesus is claiming to be the sole, exclusive mediator of divine knowledge. He isn't just a prophet pointing to God. He is claiming to be the very mind and word of God manifested in human history.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because right after making this massive cosmic claim to absolute exclusive divine authority, Jesus doesn't demand people bow and scrape.
Right.
He issues an invitation. He says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you." Now, hold on. I need to push back on this.
Go ahead.
The concept of an easy yoke has always confused me. I mean, a yoke is a heavy wooden beam you strap onto the neck of an ox to force it to pull a plow.
Yes, it is.
It is literally an instrument of forced labor. How can strapping a piece of farm equipment to your neck possibly equal rest? That feels like a total contradiction.
To our modern ears, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we have to understand the daily reality of the first century populace.
Okay, paint the picture for me.
They were already wearing an incredibly heavy yoke. The religious authorities of the day, the scribes and Pharisees, had imposed layers upon layers of man-made legalistic additions to the Torah. We are talking about hundreds of micro rules regulating exactly how far you could walk on a Sabbath or exactly how you had to wash your hands. It was exhausting.
Oh, man. The commentary actually points out later that this echoes into other parts of the New Testament. Like in Matthew 23, it talks about religious leaders tying heavy loads on men's shoulders without lifting a finger to help them.
Exactly. So when Jesus offers his yoke, the Greek word is Zygos. He's using a very common ancient Hebraic metaphor for submission to a teacher's instruction and interpretation of the law.
So he is saying, take off the crushing legalism of the scribes and put on my teaching instead.
Yes.
But how does his yoke avoid being just another heavy piece of wood? I mean, it still rolls, right?
The text uses the Greek word Christos to describe his yoke, which means well-fitted, kind, or comfortable.
Well-fitted.
Historically, a carpenter would carve a yoke to custom fit the specific shoulders of an ox so it wouldn't chafe or cause pain. The burden is light. Jesus is not abolishing the rules. He's not throwing away the Torah.
Right.
But he is shifting the mechanism of obedience.
How does that actually work in practice?
The author points out that Jesus writes the heart demands of the Torah upon the soul through spirit-empowered grace.
Okay.
This draws directly on the ancient promises of the New Covenant found in Jeremiah 31. Instead of behavior management through 600 external rules, it is an internalized obedience driven by a relationship.
Oh, wow.
It liberates people from human legalism. That is how submission actually leads to true eschatological rest, or anapausis.
Anapausis.
Yes, it's a deep, sustaining rest for your soul because the pressure of earning your salvation through perfect performance is gone.
So let's pull all these threads together. So what does this all mean? If we synthesize the historical significance of the kingdom's arrival, based on everything Marc Bates lays out in this commentary, what is the ultimate takeaway?
The takeaway is that this text is a masterwork of biblical theology that maintains a strictly non-supersessionist horizon.
Meaning, it's not a replacement of God's promises to Israel, but the fulfillment of them.
Exactly that. It achieves a restoration. But it is a restoration that completely subverted human expectations.
Yeah, no kidding.
It didn't advance by the immediate destructive annihilation of earthly political systems. There was no dynamite.
Right, no dynamite.
It advanced by the dynamic, heart-transforming power of restorative mercy. It dismantled both extremes. It didn't just abolish all law and embrace chaos, but it completely dismantled the crushing merit-based legalism of the religious elites.
It offered a beautifully balanced paradigm shift through a well-fitted yoke.
Yes, exactly.
Which brings us right back to our listeners today. Because whether you are a historian analyzing the first century or you're just examining your own worldview right now, this text is a powerful reminder of how our preconceptions can completely blind us to reality.
Very true.
Just like John the Baptist sitting in a cell demanding apocalyptic fire or the crowds demanding a specific tune to dance to, we can completely miss paradigm-shifting realities when they're happening right in front of us simply because they don't look the way we thought they would.
We get so focused on looking for the loud, aggressive revolution that we miss the quiet, structural transformation happening underneath.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over, something to explore on your own. In the middle of all this generational apathy and confusion, Jesus says, wisdom is justified by her deeds.
Mm-hmm.
According to this historical text, the kingdom's arrival advanced through restorative mercy. It advanced by healing the sick, preaching to the destitute, and offering a light yoke instead of an immediate destructive political force. So, if that is the ancient blueprint of divine wisdom, how much of our own modern human instinct, our relentless demand for immediate power, our desire to crush our enemies, our hunger for instantaneous, forceful justice, how much of that instinct is actually completely misaligned with the reality of this kingdom?
That is a profound question to walk away with.
Sometimes the revolution doesn't look like an explosion. Sometimes it looks like an invitation to rest. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.